I'd like to rejoice in Eileen. I first met Eileen on the Cambridge Yatra, which was a walk from Thetford Forest up to the North Norfolk coast for a week, camping along the way. And Eileen was part of the support team, which was for transporting the stuff from one location to another and generally looking after us. And I soon realised that Eileen was the go-to person for anything that you might need. So when I lost some tent pegs, Eileen had some spare in her car. When we ran out of washing up liquid, bit extra in Eileen's car. When I was cold at night, Eileen had brought extra blankets, hot water bottles, even spare sleeping bags. And when I really needed a cup of tea, Eileen had already put the kettle on. So I realised that Eileen was someone with a real knack for looking after people, looking out for people in a very practical way. And when I got to know Eileen a bit better, I realised that her life was, like many of our lives, full of more things to do than time to do it in. Eileen was constantly stressed, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, oh, and I've got to do that. And I realised that all these things that Eileen had to do, they were for other people. And, you know, when you or I might just sort of end up by saying, not my problem, Eileen would take her responsibilities to other people really seriously. And I can't imagine Eileen being the sort of person, when faced with someone else's difficulty, that she'd say, not my problem. And I always felt that, you know, if I had a real need for something, Eileen would be the person who would volunteer to help first. The other thing I notice about Eileen is her wisdom. So I've seen Eileen on the courses supporting the courses that we run in the centre, and I've seen her in groups and discussions, and Eileen's contributions have a real wisdom to them. And they're not kind of fancy or clever or kind of, they're just kind of real sort of common sense statements. And yet I kind of feel that there's ordinary common sense and there's Eileen common sense, because it's kind of, it's sort of common wisdom, but with a deep understanding of the Dharma imbuing it. And the other thing I'd like to say about Eileen is that she is probably the most capable person I've ever met. That cup of tea that kettle that was on the boil on the Yatra, in order to create that kettle being boiling, she had to source enormous heavy sacks of cylinders of gas. She'd had to wrangle them on and off various cars and vans. She'd had to wrangle them into a gazebo, which she will have erected herself and mended from the time when it fell over in a gale on a previous Yatra. She will have had to wrangle the pipes to connect it up to the burners, and then she'd just have a cup of tea ready just when you needed it. And in her house, in her daily life, things that you or I, going wrong, we'd call in a man to fix it. Eileen would do it herself, whether it was mending the chimney on her stove, whether it was reconstructing a broken sofa, Eileen would do it herself. So my overriding impression of Eileen is that she cares for others. She's really independent and capable when caring for herself, and she has a deep, gentle wisdom. And she's friendly and she's funny, and I'm pleased to know her. Sadhu, Eileen.